Today I'm going to talk about three teachers I had as an elementary school student: third grade teacher, fourth grade teacher, fifth grade teacher, and how they drastically affected my life. I think adults have a responsibility, especially if you're an adult dealing with children, to be a good person, or at least guide them in the right way. Two of these people have guided me in wonderful ways and have given me life-lasting impact, as I'm 25 now, and these things happened when I was 7, 8, and 9, respectively. And then one teacher sucked. This teacher probably should never be a teacher. I hope that she's not a teacher anymore, and I'm going to publicly call her out now that I have this platform, and I hope that she watches this and learns something. First teacher, my third grade teacher, Ms. Barbara McKinnon. She was my first full year teacher after I made it to the United States, as I came in middle/end of second semester. Ms. Cohen Cheng, also wonderful, but not going to talk about in this video. Ms. Barbara McKinnon, my third grade teacher. I sucked at English. I was 6 months into America, or the United States, when I entered a class, but she saw my potential. And obviously the teachers that I like are the ones that were good to me and thought I was smart. It's just how kids roll. But she really had really little to base things off of because I didn't know how to speak. I was often muttering or using Konglish or words that didn't really make sense, but she somehow saw that potential and referred me to this GATE program, Gifted and Talented Education. And my mom distinctly recalls Miss McKinnon sending her documents saying, hey, these are the things I'm going to submit to the GATE program to refer or suggest Brian to the GATE program. And my mom said they were very low quality. They didn't make any sense. There wasn't even a sense of brightness or intelligence in it. But Miss McKinnon, she's been teaching for 30, 40 years at that point, saw this potential and pushed me forward. Another instance, we had parent-teacher conferences in elementary school, and it would be literally parent-teacher and also student. And every time, we did it 3 times a year, I would cry because I was weirdly a perfectionist when I was young, even more so than I am now. Probably didn't like the fact that I couldn't speak the language that my parents or Miss McKinnon was speaking, but she really calmed me down and told my mom, this is because Brian is super smart, and he is unwilling to let the situation be unperfect. And she often said things like, oh, this is not the Brian I know. He can do this. He can do this. She also made me do this thing in the morning where I would set up the computers. Back then it was old Macs, even outdated Macs where they needed basic setup. But I think she wanted to empower me and get me to do things so that I felt even more empowered and able to move forward and not be uncomfortable with being a English as a second language person. And I think through that year, I drastically improved and became a better English speaker, became more confident in my abilities. And without her recognizing my potential, or let's say I didn't have potential, but she pushed it in and made me feel like I had potential, and now I actually got potential, nature versus nurture. I truly want to commend Ms. McKinnon. I assume she's retired by now. If you're watching this, Ms. McKinnon, from wherever you are, I really thank you so much for all that you've done. And if it wasn't for your initial push, I wouldn't have made it this far. I'm going to talk about my fifth grade teacher next, because clearly the fourth grade teacher is the crabby one. My fifth grade teacher, Ms. Ewan Taylor, she's a brilliant woman. I think she went to Stanford for some master's program or something, maybe even undergrad. It's actually Dr. Ewan Taylor. Great lady. She was a little tough, a little strict, recognized that I had a knack for talking, wanted to talk me through things a lot, treated me kind of as an adult, even though it was fifth grade. In some ways, it was a little, not whack, but it was interesting thinking back that I was 9, and she sometimes said things to me like, oh, certain students, I think, need to do this, so therefore you should lead that. She really empowered me to be a leader in that class. And I remember during the end of the year, she said she would do this thing. And in some ways, that's kind of bad because I think teachers should try their hardest not to play favorites. But she did this thing where she would give a Stanford t-shirt to the student that she thinks has the most potential or is most brilliant or similar to her, something like that. And everyone was expecting something different because I was kind of a black horse or dark sheep or just a pretty outspoken person in the class. And it seemed like she didn't really like me because she would call me out publicly and mess with me a little bit. But she gave me the t-shirt and even wrote me a letter saying that she saw my potential and she really thought that I would become a next generation leader. Since then, she's actually the only elementary school teacher I've kept up with just because she's the only one that I could find an email for. And I've given her 5-year updates about what college I went to, what job I'm in. And she told me that she actually shared those emails with her class. Yeah, I think Dr. Taylor was a little different than Ms. McKinnon. I think Ms. McKinnon saw potential and really enabled it and empowered me in a time where I had low confidence. In fifth grade, I had relative confidence. My English was there. I think I arrogantly knew that I was a little smart, but Miss Taylor really grabbed that and guided it the right way, and she would often humble me, I think purposefully, knowing that I had a bit of an arrogant problem. And there were a couple instances where I would run into trouble with kids because I was probably being cocky to them, and she navigated that properly. And I think by giving that T-shirt, I obviously didn't end up going to Stanford, but getting that T-shirt meant that I not only had an adult's approval, but a system's approval and an approved person's approval. And I can't forget that exact moment where that was awarded to me, especially because I didn't expect to get it. There were a couple other students that were clearly smarter than me, getting better GPAs, fifth grade, and had a better relationship, at least externally, with Ms. Taylor. But I think that was truly the adult move to show that it's not often what meets the eye, and it's there's students out there or people out there that others think highly of that they just don't explicitly state. And when it comes to time to appreciate, they do it very openly. Last, but certainly least, Miss Cheney, my fourth grade teacher, terrible human being. The more I think about this, I don't understand how it went understated. I should have seen red flags when I initially entered that class, and my friend Nathan left that class or transferred that class because Nathan's mom knew Miss Cheney from Little League Baseball. She was a coach for softball or something. Her husband was also a big coach. And almost in a weekend, Nathan transferred. And his mom told my mom that this woman is toxic. I kept through. And I remember two specific instances, maybe three. The first, Miss Cheney broke her arm in a car accident end of first semester or first trimester. And she came into class, very bad mood. She was crying. And I still question whether or not I'm remembering this correctly, but I am 99%, if not 100% sure this is certain, because it left such a traumatic experience in my mind. And this was still me learning English, but it was at the cusp of me actually really breaking in. So things were getting really interpreted well. And I was listening to English left and right. But I mean, you really couldn't have misheard this. We came into class and she was crying. She was explaining that she broke her arm. That situation in itself was a little bizarre. If you're a 40-plus-year-old woman teaching a group of kids, just because you broke your arm, you shouldn't sit your class in front of you and start crying. Probably try hard to control your emotions. It's okay to be emotional and teach kids to sympathize and empathize, but this wasn't like that. It was kind of like hey, I'm crying. You kids need to feel sorry for me. I'm going to break the curriculum and spend time explaining to you why I'm crying. It would have been great. Not great. It would have been understandable if she sat there about what happened in the accident and talk about safe driving practices. Again, this was fourth grade. I was 8 or 9. But she instead went on this tangent about how the only reason she was doing this was for money and how her arm being broken was making her sad and unable to do this. And the only reason she was showing up wasn't for the kids. She could have even at least sugarcoated it by saying that this was for the kids. But instead, she took this weird tangent and started talking about how like she needs to provide for the family. And the only reason she's showing up is because she needs to make a living. And I think at that point, we didn't really understand the concept of putting food on the table. We were fourth grade. I'm sure some people did, but a lot of us were probably just looking at each other thinking, oh, like I feel so bad for Miss Cheney, except everyone hated Miss Cheney because Miss Cheney was a terrible person. She would often go on these like temper tantrums and tell people or tell kids that they're in the wrong. My second biggest incident with her, and to this day, this kind of pisses me off, and I can't believe this occurred. And back then, my parents were new to the United States, so they kind of succumbed to this and thought I was in the wrong. But we were in the cafeteria line, and we had styrofoam plates or little table thingies for food. And my friend inscribed the word "stupid" on my plate, and we're friends. He was totally joking, just making fun of me. I retaliated and wrote the word "noob" on the plate, like N-O-O-B. And I knew what the word meant because I was playing video games, and noob meant newbie. It was, yes, a degrading word, but it was not a cuss word. You could ask any human being during that time and ask, is this highly offensive? And they would say stupid is a more offensive word than noob. Whoever the student aide was happened to catch me doing it, inscribing that word. This was a styrofoam plate that people end up throwing away, and wrote me up and said, this student has written a bad word. Number one, it was her fault in not understanding trends of the days, but sure, it's her job to report bad behavior. I got written up. I thought nothing of it because I wrote noob on a plate and I was 8. The next day, I woke into class and there is a note, the exact same note, magneted onto the whiteboard. Miss Cheney calls like a town hall for the class and says, "Look who's gotten written up, Mr. Brian Jun," and doesn't explain what the cause was, and just starts yelling and starts saying this kid has done a wrong deed and put this class to shame. I can't believe you've done this. And this day was Valentine's Day. There was a Valentine's Day party. And because I got this slip, she made me go to the principal's office and do this thing. I forgot what it's called, but basically scrape the floor with a tennis ball stick thing. In hindsight, it was really nothing, and I could have probably just enjoyed it. But I was on this like probation thing where I couldn't hang out at lunch. I had to run laps. No one was keeping charge of me, so I was basically just doing this as a disciplined child. Long story short, Miss Cheney, terrible person. You're a terrible person. I mean, discipline's important. I'm a big fan of rules, but you don't need to put kids on blast like that and give them trauma. I think during that year, I constantly was living in fear of this lady harassing me and putting me in trouble for very small things and putting me on these behavior contracts and doing these things for writing noob on a plate. Maybe I'm being complacent. Maybe I'm just being naive, but yeah, Ms. Cheney, you're all around terrible person. I hope you're watching this, and I hope you're not a teacher anymore, or if you are, I hope you're a reform teacher, and I hope you repent for all you've done. I almost think, in a way, you saying that you do this for money when you broke your arm is worse because you were affecting multiple children, at least with me being crucified publicly. It was just me getting hurt. I'm okay now. Yeah, I hope you're better. But more importantly, Ms. McKinnon, Ms. Taylor, you're the goats. I really hope you guys are watching this. If you are a student out there, I hope you're not a fourth grader watching my videos, but if you are, and you have teachers mistreating you, let your mom know, let your dad know, let the principal know, because not all adults are perfect human beings, but at the same time, if a teacher is treating you super well, also let your parents know, let your principal know. They deserve to be rewarded. Public education system in this country is a mess, and teachers should be rewarded more. As always, thank you guys for watching. This was actually super fun, and I'll see you guys next time. Let's go.